Now look, I already reacted to the principal findings of the fucking Mueller report, as the summary's been present from the outset, did my finger flipping and chair spinning, and to be blunt, the release of the full redacted document really doesn't change that reaction in too material a fashion. Barr, as it turns out, was fairly blunt in his initial findings, and nothing that's emerged in the 24 hours since the full 400-plus page document dropped really contradicts that. But as I predicted over 2 days ago, when the report was ultimately released, it could be fully redacted, unredacted, or replaced with a recipe for angel food fucking cake, and the Democratic response would be invariable, because the Democratic response was drafted weeks ago. Herder obstruction!
Democrats were troubled by the detailed accounts of possible presidential obstruction and quickly vowed to investigate further, including House Judiciary Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler.
The special counsel made clear that he did not exonerate the president, and the responsibility now falls to Congress to hold the president accountable for his actions.
President Trump faced an unprecedented situation. As he entered into office and sought to perform his responsibilities as president, federal agents and prosecutors were scrutinizing his conduct before and after taking office and the conduct of some of his associates. At the same time, there was relentless speculation in the news media about the president's personal culpability. Yet, as he said from the beginning, there was, in fact, no collusion.
I'm having a good day, too. It was called No Collusion, No Obstruction. I'm having a There never was, by the way, and there never will be.
And sometimes you just have to sit back and stew in the sublime lockstep stupidity of our current two-party paradigm. This, my friends, is one of those fucking times. In short, though the mainstream media is currently mid-pivot to the next controversy du jour, here in the real world, we're not sallying past the fact that the Democrats just awkwardly transitioned from a global Russian conspiracy to steal a presidential election narrative to, hey, Trump may have talked about firing a dude but didn't even goddamn do it, without first admitting that you lied about the fucking former. If you're training a dog not to shit on the sofa, you don't move on to teaching him how to sit until you stick their noses in it first and make them understand the couch ain't a crapper. Well, folks, the mainstream media just spent 2+ years pinching out the biggest nothing burger diarrhea dump in human history, so stick their fucking noses in it. Don't let them pivot. Don't let them talk about obstruction and sessions and whatever the nebulous fuck else they're trying to cyclone spin the fuck into. We will not have a discussion with you until you first lean in, take a deep bracing whiff of poopery, and stop busting ass on the bedspread. For 2+ years, the media hosted perhaps the most protracted fiction fucking workshop in the history of creative writing. And they're still fucking doing it. Just this past week, CBS reported that upon hearing of the Mueller investigation, Trump was quoted as saying, "This is the end of my presidency," and quote, "I'm fucked." Self-effacing sort that Donald Trump is. Hey, I think you forgot the part where the entire bus stood and clapped, asshole. But as with so much sensationalist pablum, subject these assertions to even the slightest scrutiny and they collapse quicker than Oprah's shower bench. Obstruction only makes sense if there's an offense to obstruct from, which you've just admitted there isn't. Never mind how waifishly thin the alleged charges of obstruction are to begin with. Are you ready for the Mephistophelian murdercraft of Donald Trump? All right, folks. T-Money complained a couple times to Jeff Sessions, which, by the way, is contradictory, given that when Sessions attempted to tender his resignation, the Trumpmeister refused to accept it. Though given that many of these quotes are from a redacted source, seem blatantly obvious inventions from the rat-faced fuckstick in question, one ultimately has to wonder if he should have shit-canned Sessions outright, or when Trump reputedly, and again with no substantiation other than Mueller's hearsay, instructed White House counsel Don McGahn to fire Mueller, which we now know would have changed the result profoundly, by saving taxpayers several $1 million. No refunds, fuckwads! This is the heart of the obstruction narrative. He asked, but did not pull the trigger on firing a guy we now all but know was fucking compromised. Why else would an investigation into literally nothing have taken all the way to the 2018 midterms and, incidentally, allowed a cabal of unqualified Democrats, many of whom we now know were committing campaign finance fraud, to cruise into electoral victories? If my train conductor's coked out of his gourd steaming Clifford, then my calling for him to be replaced by someone who isn't balls deep in blow, what am I obstructing exactly, apart from our flaming fucking deaths? Beginning to grasp why the resultant impeach now hashtag lasted about as long as Bob Dole at a swingers party? But fuck this piddly nonsense. You wanna know what really happened? I'll tell you, sight unfucking seen, using only what I've read from the report, which is actually quite a bit, and my gut as a guide. I think Mueller, being the biased horseface hack that he is, worked his shit-eating Shetland mug into believing he would in fact find evidence of Russian collusion. And so, at the outset of the investigation, he put his fucking feelers out. 100 mil here, 100 mil there, pursuing every perceived impropriety from P-tapes to pussy grabbing, all in anticipation of an eventual payoff that we now know was never going to arrive. Meanwhile, to turn the screws to Trump and ensure that when said fictitious fucking evidence arrived, he would be resoundingly goddamn Dunsky, he set about painstakingly engineering an obstruction narrative. If collusion wasn't the kill shot, he reasoned, stewing in an unremitting fart cloud of establishment corruption all the while, then the obstruction narrative would at least provide the final nail in his political coffin. And then his flying monkeys came home to roost with empty armloads aplenty, and so having wasted millions to uncover, to his unending embarrassment, no evidence of collusion, he hastily handed in his book report and fled to the fucking hills, secure in the knowledge that even absent evidence, the left would be sufficiently placated with even the unproven allegation of obstruction, even though it makes zero fucking sense to obstruct an investigation into something you now concede never fucking happened. Finn. Folks, time to say it out loud. It's fucking over. Fuck, if they weren't mortal vessels of Satan, I'd almost feel bad for the fucking Democrats. They seem to be caught in an endless Wile E. Coyote feedback loop where they're perpetually painting fake tunnels on the side of mountains only to see T-Rump somehow meep right on through. And I say this in direct contravention of my every interest and desire. Keep hurling rocks from the glass House of Representatives and see how that works out for you. Because to the average middle-of-the-road voter, many of whom were on your side in 2016, the harder you cling with white-knuckle fanaticism to the myth of the Russian bear boogeyman, the more the moderate voter begins to recognize you're more out of step than Nick Nolte at a line dance. And the more awakened to the dawning realization that dropping a few edgy tweets on Twitter, while anything but optimal, is a far fucking cry from the opposition outright trying to tank a country and an economy purely to retain their stranglehold on executive power. Do I think Trump's squeaky clean? Fuck no. No one in this shitlord shell game is. I said this at the outset in my post-election rant, and that's not even necessarily down to him for the record. It's due to the briar of backwardly invasive bullshit our political process has devolved into anyway. The mere process of elevating yourself to elected office is so prying and abasing, it's a virtual certainty by the end of it you'll be disabused of any noble or idealistic inclinations a candidate may have been naive enough to harbor to begin with. And all this jaded fuckmire of imagined affronts Trump is supposedly responsible for, conduct unbecoming a president, is the weakest by fucking far, which goes a long way to explaining why Never Trump, the weakest, least effectual, impotent movement in recent history, espouses it so fucking vociferously. Because the simple fact is, the vast plurality of humanity hasn't seen the highest executive office that way since Bubba Bill played Havana hide-and-seek with a cigar and a fat chick's hoo-hoo. We look at the commander-in-chief like the cable guy. Just do your job, do it well, and don't ogle my girlfriend's ass while you do it. I'm Razor Fist. God fucking speed.
And here you have remarks that are quite generous to the president, including acknowledging his feelings and his emotions. So what do you say to people on both sides of the aisle who are concerned that you are trying to protect the president?
Well, actually, the statements about his sincere beliefs are recognized in the report that there was substantial evidence for that. So I'm not sure what your basis is for saying that I am being generous to the president.
You face an unprecedented situation. It just seems like there's a lot of effort to go out of your way to acknowledge how this.
Well, is there another precedent for it?
No, but it's unusual.
Okay, so
that-
unprecedented is an accurate description, isn't it?
Yes, but
Okay.
what do you say to people who are concerned that you were trying to protect the president?
There's a lot of public interest in